Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Life here, and today we're going to tell you how you can up your golfing game in Mario Golf Super Rush on the Nintendo Switch. We'll be covering some arguably secret techniques, but also going over some of the really crucial techniques that the game kind of glosses over. I mean, it does explain how to do them, but it really doesn't do it very well, so we want to reiterate and re-explain in a much more sort of, we think, understandable manner. But anyway, that's more than enough waffling, let's dive right into things. The first tip, and arguably, in my opinion, the most important one, is don't necessarily pay attention to the course. In fact, in some regards, you can pretty much ignore it. Look at this hole, for example. You see how it curves round and goes round in sort of like a left-hand bend and everything, and it's quite a sort of a long and drawn-out way to go around. Well, you can follow that, but bear in mind that all of the ground around you is also fair game. By going over here and potentially using some of the other tips in this video, you can land here, right on this little path bit, and then just go straight to the green from here, and it saves you an enormous amount of strokes. Like this, realistically, it's not a guaranteed eagle, but it's pretty much as close as you're gonna get. This doesn't just apply to this hole either. There are plenty of holes where this is really, really useful, and especially if you're playing online, you can really bamboozle some people. Having said that, this isn't going to apply to every hole in the game, naturally. I mean, the ones that look like this, where it's just like a straight shot to the green, there's really no point in going off the beaten track because the fastest route is literally just the beaten track. But whenever you start a new hole, have a look at the map and see whether there are any areas where maybe you can go a slightly different route. Even if you end up in the rough, it can be far, far better to go that way than to just go the expected way. Is it within the rules of normal golf? I don't know, but it works here. Have you ever seen other players' balls look like this and they look like they're sparking or on fire or something like that? Well, that's because they're using spin, and this is something the game does mention kind of briefly, but it doesn't really give you any sort of like practical, like real-world examples of where to use it, so that's what I'm going to tell you. There are 4 kinds of spin. Standard spin, which is probably what you've been doing this entire time, which is just a normal shot where the ball will land and roll just as though you've hit it normally. But there is also top spin, back spin, and super back spin. And I'm going to explain all of them. For a standard spin, just how you've been taking every shot thus far, you simply tap A and then tap A again to select your shot strength. If you want to do top spin, when it gets to the second press, so right here, you double tap A and you'll know that you've done it right because it'll make a little bling noise like this. Another indicator that you've done it right will be because the game actually tells you, it says top spin to the left of your shot meter, which is handy. As the name suggests, this gives top spin to your ball, which means that it is going to roll further but still travel through the air the same distance, meaning that you're actually going to go further but arguably have a little bit less control. But if you're just doing a big drive at the start, you might as well use this. I mean, there's no reason not to. You're literally going to go further. Backspin, on the other hand, is for when you want more precision and you don't want to be rolling too far. For example, if you know how far it is to the green and you've got like the little, little flag indicator saying whether the hole is and you want to land pretty much there, you can apply some backspin. And to do this, you press A to start your shot, but then instead of pressing A to determine your strength, you press B. Just once, press B. Backspin means that your ball will roll forward less. In fact, sometimes it can even almost stop completely dead. I mean, it doesn't, but it nearly does. This is so useful for getting onto the green. You don't have to take roll into account. You can just line it up and put a bit of backspin on there, and you will land pretty much exactly where you want to. Really handy. Super backspin is the same as backspin, except it's even more pronounced, and this is for, I suppose, if you're worried if you're doing like a really long drive onto the green or something and you really need to stop it like as much as you can to stop any erroneous roll forward. To do this, you press A to set up your shot as usual, but then when it comes to determining your strength, you double tap B. So it's very like backspin, except you press the B button twice. Topspin is really handy, but backspin and super backspin are the real stars of the show here. Landing on the green and being this close to the pin and just being able to to either tap it in or just, have an extremely easy putt is so welcome and will absolutely bamboozle your friends, I guarantee. It's even possible using backspin, although it's not necessarily required, to hit the pin directly and just have the ball go straight down into the hole. However, that's not easy to do. It's semi-reliable, but even just hitting the pin or the flag is really tough. I was going to include it as a tip in this video, but it's a bit hard for a quote-unquote quick tip. When you're on the green and you're putting, you're nearly always going to want to hit harder than you think you actually need to. Like, you may well think that you just need to go up to where the pin is or the flag on your strength meter, and you will largely maybe get away with that, but realistically, sort of the ball's going to fall down into the hole, so going a little bit over is much more than likely just going to give you that little bit of extra margin of error so you don't fall short. This goes doubly when it's raining because putting doesn't nearly go quite as far when the grass is wet, but there is an instance where you really don't want to do this, and that's when you're putting downhill. For obvious reasons. You can tell this by looking at the grid on the green and the surrounding area and seeing in what direction the arrows or the little beams of light are going and the color of them, and that will tell you what direction the slopes are going in and whether they're steep or just a little tiddly thing. But 9 times out of 10, I always put a little bit of extra power on every putt, and unless I completely miss the hole, it always goes in. You may well know about curving your shots to go around obstacles and things like that, which, yeah, don't get me wrong, is really handy, but did you know that you can shape your shots in other ways to go further or not as far, but generally further? When you've got the wind in your favor and it's going in the same direction as where you're trying to hit your shot, you can gain a little bit of extra distance by simply shaping your shot to go higher by holding up on the directional stick when you're selecting the accuracy of your shot. This just means you're going to be hitting the ball higher than usual, but that means it's going to spend more time in the air and it's going to be affected by the wind more. And as I said, if the wind's going in the direction you want, you can take advantage of that additional power and get even further, which is really handy at times. Conversely, if the wind's going against you and you want to get as far as possible still, then you can do the opposite. You can hold down on the left stick when gauging your accuracy, and you will hit a lower shot, and it will still go as far as a standard shot, but the wind won't affect it nearly as much, which means that if you were to do a standard or a high shot, your ball would probably be slowed down and maybe sort of brought back a little bit. But if it's low, it's going to sort of skirt underneath the wind to a degree, and you will still be affected, but it will seriously take the sting out of the tail. Only thing to bear in mind is if you do a low shot and there's a hill or something, you might not make it over. Probably not necessarily going to be a concern, but something I thought worth mentioning. And lastly, something that we've all done. You know the situation. You're lining up your shot or something and you press A and you suddenly realize, no, I've thought of a better way to go, or I want to use a different club or something like that. And you sort of think, well, I'm committed now, and you go with the shot, but you've already been thrown off rhythm and you don't do the shot that you were even originally intending to do. It's a nightmare. Well, thankfully there is a way to cancel your shot, but only before you judge the strength of the shot. If you've just pressed A once, then just leave the controller alone. Don't press anything and let the bar go all the way to the top and then all the way back down to the bottom, and your shot will simply cancel. You'll be able to realign and do anything and basically start all over again. This is especially useful in speed golf because although it does take a little bit more time, if you make a snap decision and you suddenly realize it's the wrong one, you do have that little extra margin, take up a little bit more time, but you'll get a better shot out of it. It's not necessarily going to be useful in every game you play, but it's a brilliant little safety net to bear in mind if you just make a mistake, which we all do. But just to be clear, if you've already pressed A second time to judge your strength, you cannot change that. You can't cancel your shot anymore. It's set in stone. You know, Waluigi's already gearing up. And there you have it. 5 quick tips or tricks that will help you out in Mario Golf Super Rush. We hope this was helpful. We hope you learned something new. If you have any of your own tips, then please feel free to share them in the comments down below. But all that's left for me to say is thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, then why don't you whack that subscribe button with a golf club and put some topspin on it or something. And be sure to check out nintendolife.com for all sorts of lovely Nintendo-related content. Thank you again for watching. Bye-bye.